just received a nudge to share this week's channel guidance with you. So I'm coming to you from the mossy Dublin mountains here on my little break from work. Apparently not. I used to nip around the block in town on my breaks from work. Now I get to come up here, so it's amazing. So this week's message, which was for me and for anyone who is going to encounter this video or who follows my media online, is to do with energy integrity and honesty, and kind of having, exploring the integrity of your energy boundaries and getting really honest about that in terms of your kind of energetic sovereignty. So the way this came through was kind of noticing where you tend to get pulled into other people's energies and where you feel that you have to match them and shift the energy that you were in or the mood that you were in or whatever your flow you were in, and where it pulls you out of your own flow. And it's also quite strongly, there's a second part to the message, and it was to do with like having permission to stay in your own energy flow, your own natural flow. So it's an interesting one. It's like permission to be well, also like permission to thrive and be like in a good flow and continue to follow your own flow, as well as if there's something, misaligned or imbalanced that you're currently in contact with. But the message is really like permission to kind of be in your own flow when what's going on around you is not necessarily in good flow or is coming in to interrupt your flow. So it's an interesting one because it brings up, of course, boundaries and kind of enmeshment and codependencies that we tend to have. Sorry, I don't have a tripod with me, so I don't have my two hands to flap around and explain as I tend to. But yeah, it brings up boundaries. And so my cerebral self wants to kind of come in and talk about how this is exactly what I work on. And there's many reasons why we get pulled into other people's flow or, their emotions and their thoughts and their needs, and that we are, social beings, and that our nervous systems are wired to and imprinted so much by other people, especially particular people, saying our original families or partners, those we're in deeper relationships with. But I'm not going to go into that. I'm really going to try and just kind of convey the guidance. And it was really like the image of like imagining your energy boundaries, those of you who are attuned to that and can kind of sense that, like the bubble around beyond your skin boundaries, and noticing where there might be kind of hooks or things coming in or like interruptions, or where it's not actually in integrity at all and where it's actually very open and porous or maybe not distinct. And just kind of staying curious about that. No judging or blaming. Noticing just like, wow, when I am around this particular person, it's really hard for me to be in contact with myself and to keep in my own flow. Like it really disrupts my flow. Or when certain media is, information is coming in. I mean, like media being whatever, videos, songs, or if you're in a shop, TV screens or whatever, other people's conversations, happenings on the street, you can be pulled out of your energy very, very easily. And those of us who are energetically porous, like myself, will know this. But the invitation was really just to observe that and get a little bit more awareness and intel of exactly how that happens, kind of into the subtleties of it, and to notice it for you as supportive information that you can then, choose to take action on or not. And it's not kind of worrying. It's hard to it can often be hard to do this without getting into the mind, getting involved with like, well, so what do I do about this? How do I fix this? There's something wrong. My energy boundaries are all fucked. I'm not, a sovereign being. So like, don't go down any of those. This is not like a kind of, here's something else you should be doing right. It's not about going down a worry trail on it. Just like really kind of resourcing yourself with the information about how this happens and when it happens for you. And it, obviously you might have preconceived ideas about, well, I've got like a family of 5, of course I get taken out of my own energy like constantly, so whatever your situation is, you might think but there might be people who actually nourish your energy and help you stay more in flow. We're constantly being imprinted by others. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just kind of seeing which situations you get really dragged into that are actually not in your best interest. And just one final thing that I will say, which is kind of coming from my more mental self, but it felt really relevant as I kind of received the guidance. It was like, it was an insight into how the fear that comes up, when we talk about energy integrity and sovereignty and being like separate, is often to do with fear of being selfish or withdrawn or like cutting people off or being lonely, being in solitude and like isolation. But the opposite is true. So I really want to share that with you, that when we are in integrity with ourselves and in like a separate bubble energetically, people can still receive our love. In fact, what they receive is much more pure and less kind of hooked, like less kind of intertwined with more shadowy intentions, more unconscious intentions or codependencies, because we're coming from a kind of a sense of complete presence, and there's nothing that you need from anyone else energetically, because you can feel yourself, feel your heartbeat, feel your own love, your own, like the flow of your being. So see what comes up for you. We're all conditioned and codependent in some way or form. I believe that there's always little snippets that large themes or smaller subtle threads of this that are constantly being surfaced and released and worked on. So just see where the idea of even doing this is a bit like worrying to you, or brings up a sense that it might be selfish, because the message is really about like you get to be in your energy bubble and thrive, even as you might show up for a difficult conversation or responsibility to another person, but it doesn't mean that you have to match their energy and allow them to sort of invade you energetically. So I'll leave it at that before I start getting into coaching mode. But I hope that's helpful for those of you who resonate with this and maybe needed to hear it this week. Really permission to stay in your own energy bubble, see what takes you out of that, see where you begin and end, and kind of look at where you can support yourself and resource yourself to